We hear the word sovereignty thrown around constantly, right? On the evening news, during intense border debates, in basically every history book. But we rarely stop to actually unpack what it means. So today, we're tearing down the facade of everyday politics. We're going to look right at the raw engine running underneath it all, those invisible forces actively driving global politics, border crises, and the very nature of state power. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Think about it. Who really has the authority to make the final, ultimate decisions over a specific territory and the people living there? And honestly, maybe more importantly, who takes charge when the normal rules just completely break down? Why is it that supreme authority becomes the most obvious, not during peaceful times, but in moments of absolute crisis? Well, that is exactly the core mystery we're unraveling today.
Section 1. The claim to ultimate power.
Before we get to the dramatic extremes of war and national emergencies, we need to establish our baseline here. Sovereignty, at its absolute simplest, is supreme political authority. It's the bold claim to ultimate power within a defined territory. When a state claims sovereignty, it is essentially declaring, hey, we have the power to rule, to make the laws, to enforce decisions, and maintain order. And, this is the kicker, they do it entirely without having to answer to any higher political authority inside that space. So when we ask, who is sovereign, what we're really asking is, who ultimately decides what the law is?
Now, sovereignty is not just some dry, dusty academic term. It is the absolute bedrock of everyday survival. It's intimately tied to the very existence of the state, the borders drawn on our maps, the rule of law, and yes, the monopoly on violence. It literally dictates who gets to be a citizen, how wars are waged, and who wields emergency power. You simply cannot understand modern politics without wrapping your head around these pillars.
Section 2. The architects of order. To really grasp why this massive centralized power exists today, we have to look back at how it was forged. Picture Europe in the 16th century, a chaotic mess of competing authorities. Kings, nobles, churches, empires, all just fighting for control. Enter Jean Bodin, who steps in and defines sovereignty as the absolute power standing above all those local rivals. Now, what's really interesting is how Thomas Hobbes takes it a massive step further in the 17th century. Writing right in the shadow of a brutally bloody English Civil War, Hobbes argued that sovereignty wasn't just some administrative tool, it was literally about survival. Without a supreme sovereign, what he called a leviathan, human life just collapses into fear, violence, and total chaos. Fast forward to today, and that idea of the ultimate peacekeeper is still the defining feature of the modern state.
Section 3. Internal and external power.
Let's bring this concept into the current era and see how it literally divides the world today. Sovereignty basically has two major faces. Externally, looking outside the borders, it means a state is politically independent and internationally recognized. Basically, you are not ruled by a foreign power. But internally, looking inside those borders, it's the state's claim that it holds the final say over the law, over force, taxation, and policing. It's the state standing up and loudly declaring, inside these lines, there is absolutely no power higher than us.
But, despite those clean theories, reality is messy. True sovereignty is often this incomplete claim rather than a perfectly settled fact. For example, a state might claim internal sovereignty, but then lose control of entire regions to internal militias or cartels. Or it might claim external sovereignty, but find its economy entirely dictated by foreign powers, military alliances, or institutions like the International Monetary Fund. So sovereignty is frequently contested and highly unstable. It's basically a constant global tug-of-war for ultimate legitimacy.
Section 4. The state of exception. Now we're plunging into the climax of our story, transitioning from abstract laws into the terrifying reality of what happens when normal rules break down entirely. Take a second to absorb this deeply unsettling quote from the highly controversial jurist Carl Schmitt. He said, "Sovereign is he who decides on the exception." So what does that actually mean? Well, it means true sovereignty doesn't actually reveal itself during calm, ordinary times when power is just smoothly managed by constitutions and standard procedures. No, true power reveals itself when the normal legal order is completely suspended. Imagine living through an unprecedented crisis. When that happens, someone has to make the tough call. Does normal law still apply? Can your basic rights suddenly be suspended? Can the state utilize exceptional force totally outside of normal limits just to save the political order? So the crucial point is this: for Schmitt, whoever has the power to answer yes to these questions, whoever decides that an emergency exception is necessary, that entity is the true sovereign. Just think about the sheer weight of these dramatic moments: war, coups, severe border crises, martial law, counterterrorism. These are the moments where the polite mask of normal legal procedure simply falls away. Sovereignty isn't just about writing the law. It's about the ultimate power to suspend the law in the name of saving the state. In these so-called states of exception, that is when we see who really holds the reins.
Section 5. Violence, Life, and Death. We're continuing our descent here by connecting all this theoretical authority to raw physical consequences. Sovereignty is inextricably linked to violence, simply because a state claims the absolute monopoly on legitimate force. It holds the right to police, to imprison, to deport, to wage war. And this material power dictates our everyday reality. It determines who counts as a citizen, who gets excluded at a border, who receives protection, and, in the most extreme cases, who is actively exposed to violence or even death.
And this brilliantly illustrates two major concepts in political theory. First, there's biopolitics. This is how sovereign power manages and fosters life. Think public health mandates, hospital systems, or the census. Then, there's necropolitics, which is the darker side, how sovereign power exposes certain populations to death or extreme vulnerability. We're talking border walls, detention centers, or conflict zones here. Sovereignty is the beating heart of both, because it names the authority that ultimately decides and enforces these very real lines.
Section 6. Liberation or Oppression.
As we emerge into the modern paradox of sovereignty, we have to look at how this incredible power is actually used today. What makes it so fascinating is that the exact same concept is invoked by movements to conquer and by movements to free. It can be emancipatory, like anti-colonial movements fighting for self-determination and absolute freedom from foreign domination. But it can also be oppressive, because once sovereignty is achieved, that exact same concentrated power can be turned inward by the new state to police, discipline, and silence its own people. So sovereignty itself isn't automatically liberation. It entirely depends on how that supreme power is wielding.
Let's see how this all builds into our everyday reality. Modern politics is never just about the rules written on a piece of paper. It's about the underlying power structure. Sovereignty matters because it puts a name to the highest political power. It forces us to recognize the authority to rule, to enforce, and, especially in those moments of crisis we talked about, to reveal who truly holds the final power over a territory and its people.
I want to leave you with this philosophical tension. Whenever you watch the news, whenever you see a crisis unfold or hear borders being debated, don't just ask what the law says. Ask yourself, who gets to decide when the rules apply? Who gets to decide when they do not? And ultimately, who must live under the heavy weight of that decision? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep questioning the structures around you.